Deep in the heart of a forgotten village, surrounded by dense, whispering woods, stood an ancient well. The well was as old as the village itself, made of crumbling stones covered in moss and ivy. The villagers had long abandoned it, deeming it cursed. They whispered tales of a sinister voice that emanated from its depths, calling to those who dared to venture near. No one who had gone to the well ever returned. It began on a night where the moon hung full and bright in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the village. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it faint, mournful cries. Sarah, a young woman with a fierce curiosity, had just moved into her grandmother's old cottage on the edge of the village. She had heard the stories, of course, but she dismissed them as mere superstitions. Yet, something about the well intrigued her. Its history seemed woven into the fabric of the village, and she felt an inexplicable pull towards it. One evening, unable to quell her curiosity any longer, Sarah decided to visit the well. Armed with only a lantern, she navigated the winding, overgrown path leading to it. The air grew colder as she approached, and the surrounding trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches like skeletal fingers. When she reached the well, she paused, feeling a chill run down her spine. The well loomed before her, a yawning maw of darkness. She peered into the well, holding her lantern high. The light barely penetrated the blackness, revealing only slimy, damp walls that seemed to close in the deeper they went. Suddenly, she heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. She strained her ears, leaning closer to the edge. The whisper grew louder, forming words she couldn't quite make out. "Help me." Sarah's heart raced. The voice was soft, pleading, and undeniably human. She called out, her voice echoing down the well. "Who's there?" There was a long silence, then the voice returned, clearer this time. "Please, help, trapped." She felt a pang of empathy mixed with fear. Who could be down there? How long had they been trapped? Ignoring the growing sense of dread, she decided she couldn't leave without trying to help. She found an old, rusted bucket tied to a frayed rope nearby. She lowered it slowly into the well, the rope creaking and groaning under the weight. As it descended, the voice grew louder, more desperate. Suddenly, the bucket stopped with a jolt. Sarah peered over the edge, but the darkness was impenetrable. She began to pull the bucket up, her muscles straining with the effort. The rope felt heavier than it should, as if something was dragging it down. When the bucket finally emerged, it was not empty. A hand, pale and skeletal, clutched the rim of the bucket. Sarah screamed, dropping the rope in terror. The hand released the bucket and disappeared into the depths once more. But the voice remained, now echoing in her mind. "You must help free me." Panic surged through her, but so did curiosity. Who, or what, was at the bottom of the well? She decided to return home and gather more supplies, determined to uncover the truth. That night, she couldn't sleep. The voice haunted her dreams, calling to her, begging for release. When dawn broke, she gathered a rope, a flashlight, and a sturdy harness. She knew it was reckless, but she couldn't ignore the voice. She had to know what lay at the bottom of the well. As she prepared to descend, she noticed the villagers watching her from a distance, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. They tried to warn her, but their words were lost in the wind. Sarah secured the harness and began her descent, the flashlight illuminating the slick, cold walls of the well. The further she went, the colder it became. The air was thick with the stench of decay. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. The voice grew louder, more insistent, and with it came other sounds, whispers, sobs, and faint, unearthly cries. Suddenly, her flashlight went out. She was plunged into darkness. Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced herself to stay calm. She continued to descend, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing in on her. The voice was deafening now, filling her mind with its desperate pleas. "Free me. Release me." As her feet touched the bottom, she felt something cold and clammy brush against her leg. She froze, heart pounding. The darkness was alive with movement, and the air buzzed with an otherworldly energy. She fumbled for her flashlight, praying it would work. When it finally flickered on, she wished it hadn't. Before her stood a figure, gaunt and ghostly, its eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Its mouth moved, but the voice echoed in her mind, not from its lips. "Free me, in my torment." Sarah's blood ran cold. She realized with dawning horror that the figure was not human, but a tortured soul trapped in the well for centuries. The legends were true, and she was now a part of the well's dark history. Her mind raced. How could she free this tormented spirit? And more importantly, what would happen if she did? The figure's presence was overwhelming, a chilling aura that seemed to seep into Sarah's very bones. She took a cautious step back, the cold, damp stone of the well pressing against her. The spirit's hollow eyes bore into hers, a silent plea that resonated deep within her mind. "How can I help you?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. The spirit's form shimmered, flickering like a candle in the wind. The voice echoed in her mind, filled with centuries of anguish. "The locket. Find the locket. Free me." A locket. Sarah's mind raced. If the spirit needed the locket to be freed, it must be somewhere near. She scanned the bottom of the well with her flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal a layer of muck and debris. She dropped to her knees, sifting through the filth, her fingers growing numb from the cold. After what felt like an eternity, her fingers brushed against something solid. She pulled it free, a small, ornate locket, tarnished with age but still intact. She held it up, her breath catching in her throat. It felt heavy in her hand, imbued with a sense of significance that sent shivers down her spine. The spirit moved closer, its form becoming more defined in the dim light. "Open it," the voice urged. With trembling hands, Sarah pried the locket open. Inside was a tiny, faded photograph of a young woman and a lock of hair, both preserved remarkably well despite the passage of time. As she opened the locket, a wave of sorrow and longing washed over her, almost knocking her off balance. It was as if the locket held all the spirit's pain and suffering. The spirit's eyes locked onto the locket, and for a moment, they seemed almost human, filled with a deep, unending sadness. She was taken, betrayed, cursed to remain. "Please, set me free." Sarah understood now. The spirit had been wronged, its soul bound to the well by a curse tied to the locket. She knew what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, she held the locket tightly and spoke with as much conviction as she could muster. "I release you from your torment. Be free and find peace." The air around her seemed to tremble. The spirit's form began to dissolve, a look of profound relief spreading across its ghostly features. The voice in her mind grew faint, but she could still hear the gratitude in its final words. "Thank you." With that, the spirit vanished, leaving Sarah alone in the suffocating darkness of the well. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene stillness. She felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a lingering unease. She had freed the spirit, but the well still held an aura of malevolence. What other secrets did it conceal? Sarah climbed out of the well, her muscles aching from the effort. As she emerged into the dim light of dawn, she was greeted by the sight of the villagers gathered around, their faces a mixture of fear and awe. They had seen the spectral glow that emanated from the well as the spirit was released. "You did it," an old man said, stepping forward. "You freed the spirit. The curse is lifted." Sarah nodded, though she felt far from triumphant. She couldn't shake the feeling that the well's darkness was not entirely vanquished. She glanced back at the crumbling stones, now silent and still, and wondered what other horrors lay hidden in its depths. She returned to her grandmother's cottage, the events of the night replaying in her mind. As she cleaned herself up and tried to rest, she couldn't ignore the nagging thought that this was only the beginning. The well had been a gateway to something far more sinister, and she had merely scratched the surface. Sleep finally claimed her, but her dreams were filled with visions of the well and the voices of those still trapped within. She knew she couldn't rest until she had uncovered the full extent of the well's dark history and ensured that no other souls would suffer its curse. The village might have been freed from one spirit, but the well's ancient malevolence lingered, whispering in the shadows, waiting for the next curious soul to venture too close. And Sarah, driven by an unquenchable thirst for the truth, was determined to uncover every last secret it held, no matter the cost. Days turned into weeks as Sarah delved deeper into the village's history, uncovering old records and speaking with the elders. She learned of a tragic love story that had taken place centuries ago. The young woman in the locket was named Eliza, a healer who had been falsely accused of witchcraft by a jealous rival. Her beloved, a village blacksmith, had been helpless to save her. Eliza had been thrown into the well as punishment, her spirit cursed to remain there for eternity. Determined to lay Eliza's spirit to rest completely, Sarah sought out the jealous rival's descendants, believing the curse's origins might lie with them. She found the last living member of that bloodline, an elderly woman named Agnes, living on the outskirts of the village. Agnes, frail and haunted by the sins of her ancestors, listened to Sarah's story with a heavy heart. She revealed that her family had kept a book of dark spells and curses, passed down through generations. In it, Sarah found the ritual that had bound Eliza to the well, along with a way to undo it. The final step required a personal sacrifice. Sarah needed to confront the well one last time and offer a piece of her own spirit to replace Eliza's. Agnes warned her of the dangers, but Sarah was resolute. She couldn't allow another soul to suffer because of the well's curse. On a moonless night, Sarah returned to the well, the ancient book clutched in her hands. The villagers watched from a distance, their faces etched with fear and hope. Sarah recited the incantation, feeling the words resonate deep within her soul. As she finished, the well began to glow with an eerie light. A sudden force pulled her towards the edge. She held her ground, feeling her spirit being torn between the well's dark grasp and her own willpower. The air filled with a cacophony of whispers, angry and mournful, as the well fought to retain its hold on Eliza's spirit. With a final, desperate cry, Sarah offered her essence, her life force mingling with the well's dark energy. The glow intensified, blinding her. She felt a deep, searing pain, as if her very soul was being torn apart. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The well fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Sarah collapsed to the ground, her strength nearly spent. She felt a gentle hand on her shoulder and looked up to see Eliza's spirit, free at last, smiling down at her with gratitude. "Thank you," Eliza whispered, her voice filled with peace. "You have saved me." With that, Eliza's spirit dissipated into the night, finally at rest. Sarah felt a profound sense of relief and exhaustion wash over her. The villagers rushed to her side, helping her to her feet. "You did it," the old man said again, tears in his eyes. "You freed her and yourself." The well, once a symbol of fear and despair, now stood as a monument to Sarah's bravery and sacrifice. The village began to heal. The dark presence that had loomed over it for centuries finally lifted. Sarah recovered slowly, her body and spirit forever marked by the ordeal. But she found solace in knowing that she had brought peace to Eliza and ended the curse. She decided to stay in the village, helping the community rebuild and ensuring that the well's dark history was never forgotten. Years passed, and the story of Sarah's bravery became a legend, a reminder of the power of compassion and sacrifice. The well, now sealed and covered in flowers, became a place of reflection and remembrance, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And though the whispers had ceased, Sarah sometimes felt a gentle presence by her side, a silent guardian watching over her, reminding her that even in the darkest of places, there is hope and redemption.